Yes, hello and welcome back. Code with SDM here, and in today's video I'll be sharing with you guys about one of the important things that you as a Laravel developer you should know, which is role-based access approach. So why you need to know role-based access approach in Laravel development? So when we are discussing about role-based access approach in Laravel development, basically we are talking about how you're going to manage your application by using the roles and permissions. And when you are using the roles and permission, it means you are controlling which user with which permission can access a certain resource in your Laravel application. So you will be guiding and controlling which resource will be available to which user. So this will keep your application secured, and also you reduce the unwanted changes in your data. Okay, so by simplifying the thing, let's dive on how you can implement it. So we are going to use the Spatie package like this one. You can see this is a Spatie package which is called the Laravel Permission, and we are going to see on how you can integrate it with your Laravel application. And on our Laravel application, we are going to use Laravel 12 application, and we are going to use the starter kit of Livewire, which will help us to scaffold the authentication. And then from there, we are going to see on how we can control the role-based access into our application. So without further ado, let's go and see how the demo of this application looks like. So here you can see I have a Laravel 12 application up and running on my browser. So here I have a certain list of users that I can try to use. So the first user that I have the super admin, I have the admin, the manager, and a normal user. So all of those you are going to see how they differ from each other. So let's try to log in with the super admin account. Yeah, so here you can see we have the login interface of our application, which, as I've mentioned, this was created by using Livewire starter kit. So let's open the account by using the super admin account, and then let's log in. Yeah, so here you can see I've logged in successful, and I've been redirected to the dashboard of our application. And from this dashboard, you can see I have the following details. So we have the following details. Here we have the welcome back, and you can see the name of the user that has logged in. And here we have the widgets that you have created. So the first widget shows the total number of users. The second one shows the total number of product, low stocks, and active categories. But down here you can see I have quick actions, but I'll not talk about this currently. Let's finish up with here. So I have another card here on our dashboard which shows the information of the account. So here you can see we have the name of the logged in user. We have the roles, which you can see this is a super admin role. And on the right side you can see we have the email, and we have the permissions that this role has. Okay, so here after being able to see those details, above here we have the quick actions. So these quick actions just the quick way to navigate through other pages. So you can see here you can be able to see all the users. Here you can go to the management page of product, and here to the management page of rows. And all of these, you see all of these details because this is a super admin user. So I'm going to show you this on another role, and you can see how this dashboard will differ from one another. So from there, you can be able to navigate to product management. So by using this link or this one, or will redirect you to the same page, which is this one, which shows the product management. And from here you can see we have this table which shows the details of product. And from here you can see we have the actions of edit and delete, but also we have the action of adding new product. So from here we can be able to create a new product like this way, and you can see there is this model which I've shown you, and on the background we have a bucket drop which have a blur. So I'm going to show you how to add this, but the main thing about this is just to showcase on how roles and permissions works. So we don't do anything with this product. That's why you can see even the form is just a simple form, because we don't focus on this thing. So our focus should be on the roles and the permissions. So from here I'm going just to add a random data by using the form filler, and then from here I'm going just to save, and here you can see I've created a new product and I can be able to edit. You can see this is the details. So let's say the stock is 100, and then if I save again, you can see the stock has been updated. But also the user can be able to delete if they want. So here they can select that and the data will be deleted. Okay, so after that, now let's go to the user management, because if you go back here there is this link to go to the users. So it's the same as if you click here from here. So from here you can see we have the list of users, and you can see on this list we have the name, email, roles, and actions. So on the names you can see the names of the users, the emails you can see the emails, and the roles you can see one user can have multiple roles. As you can see, for this user has 2 roles. So this is how they look like. And from here you can be able to edit, and from here is where you can select multiple roles. So for example, if I want to give this admin another role of, let's say, manager, so I have just to hold the control, and then I have to click the roles that I want to assign to this user. So currently you can see this user have only admin, but if you want to assign another role, so you just have to select those 2 and then save, and you should see that roles has been added here. So I'll just return it back to 1 role and then save, and you can see the role has been changed. So but also you can be able to delete those users. So for example, if we delete this one, you can see that the user was deleted. So that's how easy you can just add those roles and permissions, but also you can be able to add a new user from here. Okay, after that, now we have the main thing that we are going to look on it on this video, which is roles management. So from here on this page you can see we have the role management, and we have the table that shows the name of the roles, the number of permissions that each role has, the users count, means the user that belongs to a certain role, and here we have the edit action. But the action of delete will be only available if we don't have any data that is depending on that role. So means if you create a new role, so for example I can create a new role, let's say demo role, and if I assign it just a simple view of these 3 and then save. So from here you can see we have the option to delete that role because it does not have any user that belongs to that particular role. So that's how we are just going to control this one, and then from there the user can be able to delete that role if they want. But from here now let's try to focus on how different users can have different access to different resources. So from here, if we go back to the users, we were using the super admin user. So for now, let's try to log in with the admin, okay? Because here you can see the role is just an admin. So now let's log out and log in with this email of admin. Enter the password and then log in, and now you can see we have this dashboard. And from here, the first thing that you should notice from this dashboard that we don't have the last quick action that we had before. So the way to navigate to the roles, we don't have that access because this user with this role of admin does not have permission to view the roles. Even on the sidebar here, you can see we don't see the roles and permission or the role management link. And even if the user try to navigate to that role by using the link, you see from here they will get this error which says you don't have permission to access this resource. So that I've controlled it by using the middleware, which I'm going to show you how you can implement that. Okay, but also if the users go to product, you can see still they have access to edit or delete and perform other actions, even to add a new product and other functionality. The same way to the users. So the admin can be able to edit the users but cannot be able to delete any of this data. So even if they can be able to add, but they won't be able to delete those users. Only superadmin have that permission. Also, we are going to see on another user. So for example, if we log in with this user, which is called the manager, so let's log out and log in again as a manager. So manager, then password. So here on the dashboard, you can see from the manager, we don't have the quick actions for the user management and also for the roles and permissions. And you can see the only permission that they have is just to view users, product, to view product, to create product, edit, to view category, to create category, and delete category only. But other than that, this user won't be able to do. But if you can see here, they can be able to manage product, to edit and add, but they cannot be able to delete. Also, on users management, you can see they don't have any action that they can perform on this list, because we have seen that they can only be able to see or to view these details, but they cannot do any action, or they cannot perform any action concerning with these details. So now the same way to the user, which is this one, which is our last user. So we can log in with that account. So let me just change this to dark mode. So let's go to the appearance. And let's go to the dark mode and let's log out. Log in again. And here you can see this is the normal user, which has two roles, the user and the cashier. So you can see we have the view of product, we have create product, edit, view category, create category, and edit category. And you can see from here they can just be able to visit the user's management, but here we don't see any permission to view that users. So if they try to visit that link, you see they will not be able to access it because they don't have permission to that. Because you can see from the dashboard, here you can see, let me refresh it again, you can see we don't have access to view the users. So that's why this was assigned, means that on user they we didn't control the user from being able to access this link. So that's why they see this link, but they cannot be able to access that. So I just left it not unfortunately, but intentionally, because I want to show you that even if the user can be able to access the link, but if they are not given access to that particular resource, they will not be able to access that resource. But also from here you can see the user will not be able to see the total number of users, because that widget was right here, but now you can see we have only 3 widgets. So all of these we are going to see on this particular video, so stick with me. So let me see you on coding session. Okay, now let's try to build a project from scratch. And the first thing is for you to navigate to this Spatie Laravel permission documentation, and you can see the version that I'm using is version 6. So make sure that you have this link because I will pin it in my video description. And from here, we need to have a Laravel application so that we can be able to install this package and to start to build our application as I've mentioned before. So the first step will be to visit Laravel HUD, which is this one, and from here we are going to start a new application by clicking this add button. And if you are new to Laravel HUD, you just need to visit the official documentation or site. From here you can just see it is called Laravel HUD, so you can just visit it and you can learn more about it. But the simplest way to explain it is just a one-click PHP development environment. So it has 0 dependencies and 0 headaches. So it's just a very good local development environment that you can use to develop your Laravel applications. So here you can see I can be able to add a new site, and from here I can just click next because I want to create a new application. And from this site I'll just click the Livewire because I want to use the starter kit of Livewire as I've shown you on my demo. So now let's go next, and from here the project name will be Laravel 12, let's say roles and permissions. Yeah, so here we are going to use the built-in authentication, and here I will not use Vault, so I'll just say no, and then I'll click next. So this will start to create our project. So let's wait for this to be done, and then we will continue and by building our application. Yeah, so here you can see our application was created successfully. So now the next step will be to open our application in our browser. So let's open it in our browser here. And you can see this is a Laravel 12 application. And from here you can see we have the login and registration pages. So without further ado, let's open it in our VS Code. So I'm just going to open it through here. So after clicking that, VS Code should be opened. So now let me close this and also this one. And this is our application. And you can see here we have our Laravel 12 framework that has been installed and other dependencies that we may need. So now let's go to the terminal because we want to install our package, which is Laravel Spatie Permission Package, as I've shown you here. So we want to install this package. So from here, in order for you to be able to install it, visit this link showing saying installation in Laravel. So let's open that one, and then you need to copy this command like that way, and then let's go back to the terminal and make sure that it's like that. Composer requires // So make sure it says composer requires /Laravel-permission. Okay, after that click enter, and this will install this package. And after that it will publish some of the things. So we are going to run another command so that we can publish the migrations for permissions and roles. Yeah, so this is done, and now let's run the following command, which is this one, which is going to publish the migrations and the configuration file for the our package. So now let's open back here and let me clear the terminal, and then let's run that command, and then enter. So you can see the assets have been published. So now the next step will be to run the migration. So php @migrate, and you can see the table has been created for permissions. So now you can be able to see that from here, because in database currently I'm using SQLite because that comes with the Laravel as a default database. So you can see I'm using SQLite here. So to see that in database, you can use the UI application by using this adminer. So let's open it, and from here login, and now you should be able to see the new tables that have been created. So you can see we have the table like model has permissions, model has roles, we have the permissions table, role has permissions, roles table, and the other default tables like users, sessions, and other things. So those are the new tables that were added as we have seen. So now let's go back to the code here, and now let's start to create our application. So the first thing is to update our users model. If you visit this documentation on basic usage, the first thing is to add the has roles trait in your users model. So let's go to the users model. So let's just open, let me close that. Let's search for user and open the model, and from here we need to add the trait, which is has role. Okay, and make sure that you have imported it. So let's import that, and this is the trait that you should add. Okay, and then after that, now we should be good. And the next step will be to add the product model, because we just want to manage the products. And here let's say PHP @sun. So you can do anything. Let's say, for example, I want to manage the table for managing cars. Okay, let's say car, then like that. Oh, here we should say make model, then the name of the model will be car, and we want the migration file. That's why I've put in this one. So we have the model car, and we have the migrations for that car. Okay, also we need to have another model which is for brand. Okay, and now let's create that, and now let's clear that. And the next step will be to edit those models and their migrations. So for example, here on our database migrations, now let's visit the cars, and from here let's update it. So we have the make, let's say model, year, color, and yeah, let's say you can add the engine size, but that's not concerned because we just want to see this in action. So let's see. So we have the name, the brand, okay, like that way. So after that, now let's close these two. Now let's update the models. So on the models here, we just want to have the, now let's add the relationships. So you can add the relationships if you want, because now we don't have a way to connect the model or the brand with this one. But if you want, you can just add them. But for now, let me just put something like that. And then let's go to the brand, and let's add something like that. So because these relationships are not our concern for now, our concern is just to see on how you can just control the access to these different resources by using the role-based access of our Laravel application. So now, since we have those two tables, now let's migrate PHP at some migrate. After that, now let's clear the terminal. Now the next step will be to create the actually we need to create the Livewire component so that we can be able to manage the users, and after being able to manage the users, then we need to have a way to manage our roles and permissions. Then from there is where you can start to create the other Livewire components, let's say for the car, to manage your cars, and also for the other things that you need to add. So for now, let's create the component for managing users. So PHP adds and make Livewire, then user management, so here you can see it has created the component class and the component blade file. So now let's go and update those two. So here on user component, we are going to perform the following things. So the first thing is to paginate our users. So I'm going to use the trait of or attribute of use with pagination. Make sure you have imported that, and then after that, let's define the public key properties. So public key properties that we need. So the first public property will be to control the user. So the user ID of the user that we are currently managing. So let's say user ID, but also we need to have the one for the name of that user and the email. Also we need to have the password, because here we are going to be able to create user and update it. So now let's also have another public key property which is called the selected roles. And this should be an array. So this is where we are going to store all the roles that this particular user has, or the roles that you want to give to that particular user. So we are going to store them inside that array, and then we need to have a flag which will control on how we are going to show the model for editing, adding, and performing other functionalities. So that flag, I'm going to call it is editing, and by default it should be false. So by default we are not going to be editing, so we'll just trigger that and update it, and that's when we are going to show the model for either adding or editing our user. But also you need to have another property for controlling the way to show our model. So we are going to call it show model, and by default it should be false. Okay, and then after that we need to define the rules for for validations of our properties. So let's define them down here, and I will just paste some of the rules that I've already prepared. So let me just copy it and paste it here. So we should have something like this. So for the name, we need to make sure that it is required. It should be a string. The similar way to the email, it should be an email, and it should be unique. Also, we need to have the password. So we need to have something like that. And for the selected rows, we should make sure that it is an array. And then after that, we need to have another function which is called the public function create. So in this function, we are just going to perform some of the following things. So the first thing will be to show the model. So when the user will be creating the new user, we should make sure that the show model will be equals to true. Why? Because we want to make sure that that model will be shown as I've shown you on the demo. So when the user click add new user, then we need to show the model. So this is where we are going to trigger that functionality. Okay, so now let's go and update this blade file, but before we go there, let's update the other functions. So I just want to make sure that we complete all the functionalities, and then we are going to just paste the blade file. So this code will be accessible through my GitHub repository, so that's why I just want to make it to be a little bit quick. So on roles and permission component, that's where I'll be in detail, but for this other component, let me just paste some of the codes. So here, let me just paste another function. So we are going to have another function called the edit, which is this one, and let me import this one, and then I'm going to explain to you what is going on here. So the first thing here, you can see we are trying to authorize our user. So we are going to check if this user that is performing the edit is authorized to perform editing of user. So you can see this is the ability or the permission that that user should have. So if the user does not have that permission, this should not be allowed to be performed. But if they have, now we should be able to find the user by using the ID that has been passed, and from there we are going to find or fail from the user's model, and then we are going to get the user, then we are going to get all the details for that particular user. So you can see we have the user ID, name, email, and then we are going also to get the roles that that user has. So you can see we are plugging the name of the role, and we are changing it to, or we are transforming it to array. Okay, and then after that we are going to say the is editing is true, and also the show model will be true, because these are the value that we are going to be populated into the editing form. After that, now we need to have a way to save our data. So let me just copy the save functionality. So this will be another method which is called the save, which is this one, and from here let me import this hash first, and let me explain it a little bit quick. So you can see here we have just a simple if condition which checks if this user is editing. Remember we are using the editing here, and we make it to be true. So if that will be true, means we need to check if that user has the ability to edit that user, and then from there we are going just to perform the validation by checking the rules of an email, and then we are going to check the rule for password. If that will be good, means we will return this one, and this one will be true, and then after that we are going to create this user data. After that we are just going to check if it's not editing or the password is true, means we are going to get the password, we are going to hash it, means we are decrypting it, and then means we are encrypting it, and then down here we are going to check again if the user is editing, then we are going to find that particular user, and then we are going to update the user by using the user data that we have created from here. Okay, and then after that if the user is not editing, means we are going to create that particular user. Okay, so we are going to use this user data, including this hashed password, and then we are going to either update the user or edit, or create that user. And then after that we are going to sync the roles that particular user has been selected. So from here you can see we have that selected rows array, and from here we were just getting those rows, and we will be accessing the rows that will be coming from the form, and then after that then we are going to just sync them here. So when we are syncing them means we are going to assign them to the particular user, okay? And then after that we need to add the functionality to delete our user. So down here we need to have a way to delete our user, which is here we have this action or method called delete, and then it accepts a parameter of an ID, and then from here we are going to authorize if this user has the permission to delete a user, and then if they have, it's just a matter of getting that user and then call the delete function. After that then we are going to return a flash message which is saying user deleted successful, okay? And then after that we need to have another method for closing the model. So let me just show you down here. So this will be called, and it will be checking, will be changing the show model property, and it will change it to false. When it will be changed to false means we are going to close that model, and then we are going to reset the form. But this function we don't have it yet, so what we need to do is just to create that function. So let me just show you down here. So this is the function which is called the reset form, and from this function we have a way to reset all the properties that we have on our component. So the first one will be the ID, we'll have the name, so we are just resetting them to the original form. So we are going to just to make them null, empty, and the array we need to make it to be an empty array. This editing we are going to change it to false, and the validations we are going to reset them to the initial state, okay? And then after that here on the render method we need to add a way to authorize our user if and we are going to check if the user has the roles to access these roles, and I mean in the user management component. So what we are going to do is just to say then authorize then user view, okay? So just like that. And after that we need to update here on how we are going to return the data. So let me just paste the way I'm returning those datas here. So from here let's import this one. So this is coming from Splash, so let me import that, and here you can see we're just getting the users and we are just paginating those users, but also we are calling the relationship which is called the rows, and down here we are getting all the rows that we have from our database, okay? So this is how we are going to pass the extra data into our Livewire component or blade view. So now let me just go to the blade view, and here I'm going to paste the code which I will explain to you step by step so that you can understand what we are building, okay? So from the user management you can see down here I have this heading which is here up to here. So this heading is inside this main screen or the main div which carries this and other divs down here, but this one is for heading, and up here we are controlling on how the user can be able to access the add new user. So we are checking if the user had the ability to create a user. So you can see we are using this directive which is called the can, and from this scan directory you need to pass the name of the role, I mean the permission, and that permission is called the abilities, and from here is where you are going to pass that button. So means if the user does not have the permission they will not be able to access this button, okay? And this is what we have seen for the user that is not an admin, they cannot be able to add or to create a new user. But if you assign them the permission, they will be able to access this button. Alright, so after that button, down here we have an if condition or an if block, and inside it you see we are checking for the message, which is a key that is coming from the session, and this is coming from the component here where we are trying to flash those messages. So it will check if that message has been flashed. So in here, if it will be having that message, then this div will be executed and it will be shown with that particular message which is coming from the session. And this is the styling that I've just styled it to have a background of green. Actually, I have a border, you can see, and on dark, its background should be green of 800, but if it's on light mode, it should be a green of 100. Okay, so you can just change these styles. So you can see these are the styles that I've applied, but you are free to change anything that you feel does not meet your needs actually. And after that, here we have this another div which stores the data of all the users. So you can see here inside here we have the table, and on this table you see we have the table heading, which will contain all the header section of our table, and down here we have the table body. So on the table heading we have the name, email, roles and actions, and down here we have the table body, which contains the data of our table data. Okay, so down here you can see I've looked through the users that we've returned through here, which is this one. So from that users list, now I get this user, and then from there down here you see I'm running on each of these users, and you can see I'm getting the name, I'm getting the email, and down here I'm trying to show the roles that this user has. So I'm running again through the roles that this particular user has. So from here you see from the roles, then I'm getting the role, and then from that role is where we are going to show the name. And these styles is just as I've mentioned. So this is how it looks like as I've shown you in the demo. It will be a background of blue of 100 on light mode, but on dark mode it should be of 700. So you can change that if you want. And also we have another table data which contains the actions. As you can see here we have the actions. So down here you see we have the two actions, but these actions, whenever you have any action, because that will be a way of doing things throughout the tutorial. So whenever you have an action, you need to make sure that you apply this a can directive, which inside it you are going to pass the ability or the permission, so that you can control all the actions that you don't want any user to do, or you want to allow the user to do is only allowed for the users that have that ability or that permission. Okay, so that will be our format throughout the tutorial. So this is for the editing. So we just want to check if the user had the permission for editing a user. So if they have, then they will see this one, but if they don't have, they will not see that particular button. Okay, so this button will be editing, and you can see here we are calling this edit method. So from this wire click, which is an event, so we will check when the user click that button, then we are going to call this method called the edit. So this method already we've defined it here. So we have that method which is called edit, which is this one. So that's what I was trying to explain here. So it will be called, and you see here it accepts an ID, which we have passed it like this one. Okay, and up here you need to make sure that whenever you are looping through the details for the consistency of Livewire, use this attribute of wire key, and then inside it you need to pass the key of the data that you are passing. So here it will be user, then ID. Okay, similar way to when you are looping through this, so you can also apply the wire key. So you can just let me just do the same thing here. So this should be rows. So it should be role, then ID. Okay, so now that should work. So now below the edit, we have the delete method or the delete button. So this delete button, also we need to make sure that the user has the permission to delete that user. So that's when we are going to call this wire click. Then we are going to call this action or method, which is called the delete, which we have already defined here on our component class. And you can see from the component class we have the method called the delete, and we are accepting the ID of that particular user that you want to delete. And then down here you can see we are just checking if the user have the ability to delete, then we are authorizing, and then we perform the delete functionality. Okay, and here we show the confirmation method or message so that the user can confirm if they want to delete the user. But you can change this one. Let's say, for example, instead of returning this one, you can use the one from Livewire, which is called the wire confirm. Okay, and then you can just say this way, and then are you sure? Okay, so from that way it will be working just fine. So after that, make sure that you close this scan, because this is the directive. So if you open it, make sure that you close it. So similar way to the for each loop that we have opened it down up here, make sure that you close it down here. So here the table ends. Now we have this div which shows the user links, means that we are going to paginate our users, because the users are coming in a paginated form. So you have to show the links so that the user can be able to see the page numbers and everything that they need to know about the page which they are looking for. Okay, and after that we have this model, which is the model that you were shown when you just try to either edit or add a new user. So when you are trying to edit or add a new user, you can see from here, this is how we are going to check if we need to show this model or we don't want to show this model. So we're going to check if this show model is true, means whenever you click create or whenever you call edit. Okay, whenever you call all of these two, either this one or this one, you can see we are going to set this to true, because by default it will be false, so means that the model will not be shown. But when you just click either create or edit, this will be set to true, and when it will be set to true, means we are going to show this model. Okay, so down here you can see this is my model, and I've just applied the backdrop of blur, and I've used the medium so that we can show a little bit of blur on the background of that particular model. Okay, and after that down here you can see I was checking in order to show the heading of that particular model. Like if the user is editing, means if he is editing, we are going to show the heading as edit user, but if they are adding a new user, means we are going to show add user. And that is this is the flag actually, which is right here. You can see by default is false, means the user is not editing. But when you click edit, means we are going to set this one to true here, and after setting that to true, means we are going to change from this one to this one. Okay, after that we have the form, which is form that we are going to see in a minute, that I've shown you on the demo. So here you can see we have the name. So this is the field of that will be used to add the name of the user. So you can see we have the property binding. So from here you can see we are using the model. Then this model is binded to the property called the name on our component, which is this one. Okay, so down here it will be the same thing. So you can see we have this error directive, which will help us to show the error message of any validation. So that is a similar way for other, let's say, email, password. Then down here we have the select tag, which inside it we have binded the wire model. and then we have binded the selected rows. So the selected rows, as I've mentioned before, this is an array which will contain all the rows that this user has been assigned. Okay, and you can see from here, this is where we bind it, and we allow the user to be able to select multiple rows. And from here, we are looping through the rows that we get from here. So you can see these are the rows that we have. So we are going to loop through them, and then we are getting the name of the role, and then we are showing the name of the role. So when the user selects this one, means we are going to get that role, and we are going to bind it on this particular property, which is selected roles, which is this one. Okay. After that, we have the button for either canceling or submit. So on the cancel, we are going to call this method called the close model, which is right here. Or let me show you that, which is this one. So it is going to put this one to false. So the show model will be returned to false, and if it is returned to false, means we are going just to close that particular model. And then we are going to call the reset form method, which is this one. So it will set all of these fields back to their initial state, but also we are going to reset the validations. So that is just a simplest way that you can understand this blade view for managing users. So now, because we want to test our application so that we can be able to start to add users and edit or just to perform all the CRUD operations. So now let's try to add a demo user. So we are going to use db seed, and what is going to happen here, we are going to seed the fake data by using this user that is coming from the database seeder. So by default, Laravel will give you this factory, which is found up here for the user factory. You can see, so it will create the fake name, email, the password, which will be password, and other things that you want. So it will just generate that user from this seeder right here. But if you want to create more than one user, you can just uncomment this one. But if you are creating just a testing user, so this is the best one. So now let me just run it. So means we are going to have the test at example.com as the email, and the name will be test user. Okay. So this is done. Now means if we navigate to the database, so you can just open the adminer here, and it will be like this way on your browser. And if you visit here, let's see on users table. So you see, now we have this user. So we can just use that user here on our application to log in. So the other thing that we need to do is to run npm run dev. So we're just going to run npm run dev. And after that, if we go back here, so you can see we have the login form here, which is coming from Livewire starter kit. And from here, let's try to log in with the test at example and use the password that we have seen from the factory. And now let's see. So this is our dashboard that we have been redirected to. So now we need to find a way to show that list of users from this sidebar here. So to do so, the first step will be to navigate to the sidebar. So just search for the sidebar here, and from here you can see this is a group of platform that you see from here. You see, this is a platform. So inside it, you see there is this navigation which is called the dashboard. So means we need to create another group. So I'll just copy paste this one, and I'll call it user management. Okay, and from here we need to have that route. So to do so, we need to go to the web.php file, and from here we need to create a new file, a new route, which will be let's say get, then this should be user management, and this should reference our component, which is user management. So call it user management. Make sure that it is coming from Livewire, and then this should be a class, and then let's give it a name, because here on sidebar we are supposed to pass the route name. Okay, so let's just give it a name, which is gonna be user let's say index. Okay, so you can just pass the name that you want. So I'll just name it that way, and this should be the name that should be referenced here. So paste here and also in here. So this should be for the route, and this should be for checking if that is the current route. Okay, so let's just paste both of those two, and here we need to change the label, which should be user, let's say management, or we can call it manage user. Okay, that sounds good. Now let's see. Yeah, so now it looks good. So you see we have the user management, this is the group, and then we have the link, and here you can see this action is unauthorized. Why? Because we don't have the permission to access this particular page. So what we can do is to create just a simple database header that we can use to populate those functionality for this particular user, and after having that means this user will automatically be able to access this page, and then we can use this user as admin, and then they can the user can be able to authorize other users. So let's say to assign them some roles and permissions and something like that. So for now, let's focus on creating that database header. So what I'm going to do is just to close all other things. So let me close that one. And basically here on sidebar, what you need to do is to control who can access this particular page. So we're going to say if the user has the permission of user, let's say manage. So let's say we can just do this later on. So for now, let me just focus on creating the new database header. So let me just go back to this terminal and let me create. So let's run that one. PHP @ make header, and then it should ask me for the name of the header. So I'm going to call it role permission header, and then you can see this has been created inside the database directory, then inside the headers directory. So if you go to the database headers, now you find that particular file has been created right here. So now let's edit the file inside the run function. So what we are going to do first is to create the initial permissions that we need. So to do so, I'm going to paste some of the permissions that we need to have for the initial step. So let me just paste them so that we can be able to use them as we go. So here I'm going to paste the following permissions. So these are just the permissions that I've just tried to create. So this one will be for the user, which will be related to user management. So we have the user view, user create, user edit, and user delete. Also, we are going to have the following for the product, and this one for the category, and there is more. So this is just for the sample, but basically remember that here we have the car and brand. So if we have the car and the brand, means we need to change this one from product, let's say to car, and this should be in small letters, so it should be car, okay? And this one, instead of category, so we need to have the brand, okay? So let me change that one to brand, okay? Because we changed that so that we can have something that we build on our own, okay? So this is for the initial permissions, and then this will be for permission management. So we're going to have this for the role view, role create, role edit, delete, permission view, and permission assign, okay? So those will be the permissions that we need to have initially. So we need to create those permissions into our database. So what we can do is just to have a for each loop here, and that loop will run through the permissions that we have above here, okay? So we are going to run through them like that way, and then we are just going to say as, then here instead of value, so we can just say permission like that way, and here let's create those permissions. So we are going to call the permission model, which is coming from Spatie, and then we are going to say create, and from the create method we are going to pass the name, and that name should be from permission, okay? So after that, terminate, and now we should be able to have these permissions inside our table, okay? But that's not all, because we need to assign the roles. We need to create the roles and assign these permissions to that particular role. So down here, let's create another things that we need. So I'm going to create role and assign the permissions, okay? So down here, I'm going just to say, for example, the first permission or role will be super admin role, and then I'm going to say role, then you create, then I'm going to create the role name to be super admin, okay? And then we are going to assign the permissions to this role. So we are going to say super admin role, then we are going to call the method called give permission to, okay? And inside it you should pass the roles, or I mean the permission that you wanted to assign to this particular role. So what we are going to do is to call the permissions, means we are going to assign all the permissions that we have, because this is a admin, so should have the ability to access all the permissions. So now import this model role, you see? So now we have something like this, and see, so this is the role, and then from that role we are going to assign that particular method. So let me make sure this is permission to, yeah, so it is permission to. Make sure that you have write it as I do. So now the next thing will be to create another role, but this role will give some of the initial permissions. So for example, you can create the role, let's say for the just a normal user, but you can just create a role that you feel you need it currently. But for me, I guess this is fine, because we just want this super admin to be able to access the details, and then from there we can continue to create other users and assign them the roles through the UI, because the intention of this video is to show you how you can, instead of managing these roles by using the code, so you can just transform this to manage it through the UI. So that's why we've just created this application. So this tutorial will show you that step by step. So now after we've been able to do the step of creating those roles, so we've created this role with these permissions, we've just assigned them here. So now means we can be able to run this command, and after that make sure you have the super admin of your system. So the super admin of our system currently that we supposed to assign the role down here. So we need to assign the role, let's say user. Okay, so what we can do, we can just call the first user that we have on our system. But because our user that we have currently on our system, this is called the test user, I want to create another user called the super admin so that we can have the distinctive users. So here I'm just going to create a new user. So I'm going to say super admin user. So I'm going to create that user. So user create, then inside it I'm going to pass the array where I'm going to define the name, and that should be corresponding to admin. So now let's change this one to email, and then this one to password. So here the email you can change it, let's say to admin@example.com, and then for the password you can just use the hash to decrypt, to encrypt your password. So hash, and then use the facade, and then use the make method, then pass the password that you want. So I'm going to pass the password, and then this should be our super admin user. Okay, and after that, after creating that user, now we can say super admin user, then we are going to say assign the role, and then we are going to assign this particular role. So we're going to say super admin role. Okay, after that, now let's terminate that, and now this should work. So now let's go back here, let's run php artisan db, then seed, but specifically you need to say class, and then you have to call the class that you've created, which is called the role permission seeder. So role permission seeder. Okay, so now you can see it is seeding the database, and now if we go to the database again, and from here if you select again, you should see the super admin user, which is this one. So you can see, and on these tables for role has permission and roles, you can see from the roles here we have the name of the role, which is super admin. You can see the guard is web, and there is other fields that you can see, but also we have the table for permissions. So from here you can see these are the permissions that we have. So you have the user, view, car, brand, also the roles. So those were the initial permission that we assigned our user through this role and permission seed. So now if we go back to the view here and try to visit this page, now let's try. Okay, so this user does not have any role. So now let's go back and log in with the super admin account. Let me log in with the super admin account. So we need to say super admin at example.com, then a password. Now we have the admin logged in successful. Now let's visit this page, and now you see we have this page open, and here you can see we have the listing of users. So we have the test user, super admin, you can see their emails, the roles and the permission. You can see here we have the roles. So the first user does not have any role, so that's why you see it's blank, but for the super admin you can see we have this super admin role. Here we have the actions for the edit and delete. Also we have this button, which is add user. And as I've mentioned while I was explaining to you about this user management blade file, we used this one to check if that user has this permission. So you can see from the database that we have the permission to create a new user, and that's why we have the ability to see that particular button. And when you click that button, it should pop up the model, as you can see. So this is our model that we can use to create our user. And from the roles, you can see we have only one role. Okay, so without further ado, if you are new to the channel, please consider to subscribe, like the videos. So there is a couple of videos here that are very useful, so you can just check them on your own. But also, if you want to get a hosting plan, so you can just use this hosting referral code that I have. So just click this link and it will direct you to the hosting where you will get a 20% discount from any hosting plan that you choose. So from there, now the next step will be to create the role and management Livewire component. So let's go direct to the terminal and let's create that particular Livewire component. So here, PHP at Sun Livewire, then we call it role management. Okay, click enter, and now see this is our component that has been created. So from there, now let's try to manage it. So you can see it has just opened like that way, and from here we are just going to use the following things. So we are going to use the pagination. So with pagination, make sure you start with that one. And now let's define the properties that we are going to use. So the first property will be public show model, and by default it should be false. And then we need to have the public role ID. We need to have the name of the role. So by default, actually, you can just put this one to an empty string, but I'll just leave it that way. So you can just say public key selected permission. So this will help us to store the permissions that you want to assign to a certain role. Okay, and then we are going to have another flag for checking if the user is editing the roles. Okay, so is editing, and this by default should be false. Okay, after that, now we need to have the rules for validations, as I've showed you on my previous component. So here let's paste the rules. So you can see from this particular property we have defined these rules. So we have the name, which is this one, so we make it to be required. It should be a string. The maximum value that you can pass, it is 255. You should make sure that this is unique on our table, which is called the rows, and the field or the column should be the name. But also we need to make sure that the selected permissions, which is this one, is an array, as you have defined it. We have strict or we have type hint it to be an array. Okay, after that we need to have a function that will be used to trigger the creation process. So this will be for create. So that function will be public function create. Okay, and inside that function you're just going to perform the following authorization. So you need to make sure that you authorize to only the user that has the ability or the permission to create the role should be able to create the role. Okay, so here we're just going to say this, then we want to reset the form. set form. So I'm going to define the form in a minute. So that's why I call this method, and we are going to create it down here. So let me say we are going to say show model to be true. Okay, so we are just going to set this one to true, and after that also control when you are doing the editing. So I'm just going to do the same thing that we did before. So I'm going to paste the code. Okay, and let me import that role model. So import that one, and here you can see from the edit method we accept the ID as a parameter. Then we authorize if the user has the role, the permission to edit the roles, and then if they have, here we are going to get the role by getting it from the role model. Then we get it with the relationship to permissions, and then we are going to call the find or fail. So the find or fail will check if that ID exists in roles table. So if it finds it, it will continue here, but if it fails, it will throw an error. Okay, so after when it will be found, then it will assign to this particular role ID property that we have defined, and after that we are going to assign the name of that particular role to this one, and then we are going to get all the selected permissions from here. So we are just going to get the role, which is this one, and then we are going to get the permissions from it, and that from that permission we are just going to plug the name, and then we transform them to be in array format. Why? Because here we've hinted this one property to be an array, so you have to change these models to be array. Okay, and after that we are going to trigger this one to be editing to true, and after that is when we are going to show the model. So here you see the model, we set it to true. So you can see here it is false, but now we are setting it to true. And after that we need to have a way to reset the form. So I'm going to call that method, because we have called it here, so we need to define that method down here. Okay, so from here we are just going to return this field to their initial state, so as they were before. So this is important because when you are creating a new data, you have to make sure that the form does not have any binded data from these properties. Okay, and after that we need to have a way to close our model. So let's call this method down here. So we define that method or action which is called the close model, and inside it you see we are just going to change that flag from true to false again, and then we are going to reset our form. Okay, so it means we are just going to unbind all the method, as you can see. Okay, and then after that on our render method we need to authorize this page to only authorizable users or the authorized users. So we are just going to say if only the user have this particular permission, they should be able to see the page. But if that's not, it means they will see the message showing them that they don't have the permission to access that particular page. Okay, and after that, now let's pass the following data here. We pass the following. So we are just going to have the role. So this role actually is just going to call all the roles, but we're just going to paginate them to 10 roles. So remember to call the permissions because we want to see all the roles with their permissions respectively. And then down here we need to get the permissions. So let me just pass down here the permissions. So here what we are doing, let me import this one first, and here on permissions we are just going to call all the permissions that we have from the database, but then we are going to group them by using this way. So means we're just going to use that permission that we get from here, and then we are just going to explode those permissions, because on our permissions we have this separator Okay, so we can see, for example, this is our permission. So you can see the permission have this dot. Okay, so we are going to explode. So this method actually will be able to split a string by a string returning an array of strings. So it will just export these permissions, and it will return them in a way of arrays. Okay, so when it will be returned as in form of arrays, so it will be easier for us to control them. Okay, and after that, now as we have get these permissions, now it is time to update our view or our blade file. So from this blade file, we are just going to have the following, which I'm going to explain to you as we did before. So let me just paste it, and then let's explain everything bit by bit. Okay, so here you can see this is our heading, which says role management, and from here you see, as we did before, we have this particular button, which is enclosed or enclosures by this particular can directive, which see if this user has this permission, and if they have the permission to create the role, means they will be able to add or to create the roles. So they will trigger this method, which is called create, and which is this one that we have defined here. Okay, so after that, now we have this if block, which will check for the message as we did here. So that will be able to provide the notification or a way to show the user that the action they were doing has been completed successfully. And after that, we have the table as we had before, but now we have the name of the role, we have the permission count, we have the users count, and we have the actions. Down here we have the table body, and from the table body we are running through each of these roles that we have from here. Okay, and then we are going to create a role object, and then from that object is where we are going to show the name and the permission count. So we're just going to get the permissions from that particular role, and then we call the count method similar way to the users, because we have the relationship between the role and the users that belongs to that particular role. And then we are going to call the count so that we have the number of users that belongs to that particular role. And here we have these actions. So on actions, as we did before, we have the role edit. Well, that is a particular ability or permission. So we will check if that user has that ability. So that's when we are going to have that button shown to that particular user. But if that's not the case, means that user will not be able to edit those data. Okay, similar way to here on delete. So we are just going to have another if condition that if that particular role contain even a single user, or even a single user belongs to that particular role, means we don't need to be able to delete that particular role. Means it will have the dependency data. Okay, so those dependencies will not allow you to delete this data. Okay, so that's easy. And down here you can see we are showing the links of the paginated roles, and down here we have the model as I have mentioned before. So here we are just checking if that the user is editing or not editing. So if he's editing, means we are going to change that one, let's say to true, like this one, but also we are going to change that to true, means that the model will be shown. And after that, here you can see we have the name of the role, we have this input which you have binded the name of the role from here. Okay, and then after that we have the error message for validations. Down here we show the permission. So here the thing that has changed is because we have the grid, and from this grid we are just going to run through all the permissions. So we are going to define the group here, and then we are going to have the key and its value, and then on this value remember as we did here, so that will be the grouped data from here. Okay, so those data that we have grouped from there will be easier to access them here. So now you see here we are just going to show the group, which is the key, as the heading, of that particular role, and then permission, and then down here you see we are going through the group permissions, and then we are going to get that permission, and that's when we can get the name of that particular permission, also its ID. Okay, so that is on our input, and we have binded that to be inside the selected permission. So when the user click any of these input, because these inputs will be the checkboxes, so these checkboxes means when the user click or check a certain checkbox, we will update the selected permission property, which is an array, which is this one. So we are going to store that particular ID, which is this one. Okay, after that, now we have the label, and that label will be defined using the name of that particular permission. After that, we have the buttons for cancel and save. So if you cancel, we are going to close the model, but if you submit, means we are going to save that role. But here we don't have the function to save, so let's create that one here. So let me just call this one. So here we are going to have that method for saving data, and you can see, so it will be checking if we are editing. So if we are editing, just authorize if that user has the ability to edit, and then you are going to check for the rule of validation, and after that, if this is not editing, means it is creating, so we are going to check if the user has the ability to create the roles, and after that we are going to validate those two, and after that we are just going to have an if condition. So if we are editing, means we need to update that role, so we're just going to find that particular role, and then we are going to update it down here. But if we are not editing, means we are going to run this else block, and here we are going to create that particular role, means that role does not exist on our system, so we need to store that here. Okay, after that we get that role, and then we sync the permissions that we have from here. Okay, so we are going just to get them from there, and then we are going to sync them here. So when you use this sync method, it will going to remove all the current permissions, and it will set the given permissions. So all the IDs that you have here will be set to this particular role. So all the existing one will be erased. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. And down here you can see we have this reset form method that has been called. So you can see from here we don't have the reset form. Okay, so we have defined it down here. Okay, so we call it, so we are going to return all of this field to the original state, and then we are going to set this one to false, so that we can do it for another action, and then we are going to flash the message. Okay, after that the user can be able to delete the permission from here. So you can see we have the delete method that is required to be defined here. So let me just call it down here. So this is our delete method, which accepts the ID as we have seen from here. So you can see we have the ID passed down here, and from there the user will need to authorize that user if they have the ability to delete. So if they have, means we need to get that role and then call the delete method. Okay, but remember, as I've mentioned, you will only be able to see this particular action if you have the role does not have any user that has been assigned to that particular role, and also you will be able to delete it if the count of that particular users is 0. Okay, so after that, now our component is complete. So now we need just to register it in our sidebar. So the first step will be to add it in our roles, on our route. So let me just define the new route here. So just say role manager and then role management, which is this one, and then let's call the class, and let's define the name, and from here we can just call it role manage or just manager, and then let me copy this name, and then let's use it on our sidebar. So let me just copy paste this one, and this one should be role manager. Okay, so copy it, paste it here, and here it should be manage roles, but the icons here we didn't change. So for the users, I'm going just to say user, let's say group, and for user I'm going to use user, for the roles I'm going to use the user circle, so it should be user circle. Okay, so now let's go back here and try to refresh. Okay, so here you can see the icons has been changed, so we can see from here, so the icons has been updated. So now let's go to the manage roles, and here you can see we have the role called the super admin, which we have created through Cedar. So you can see this was the role that we have created, and we assigned the particular permissions that we have created from here. So that's why here you can see the permission count is 18, and you can see the users count is 1. That's why you don't see the delete button from here. So we have only the edit and add role. Okay, so here you can add a new role. So for example, we can say let's create the role for the normal user. So we can just call it, let's say, normal user, and then we can say this can only be able to see the users, can only be able to see the cars, the similar way to brand, and here we don't give any permission, and also they can be able, let's say, to update the details of the car. Okay, so now let's save. See, so the role saved successful. So that was the flash message, and then from here you can see the name of the role, and here we have the number of permissions that we have, and you can see the number of users belongs to that particular role is 0, and here you can see we have the option to delete that particular role. Okay, so now we can be able to assign this particular role to a user. So if we go back to the user, which is this test user, we can go to edit, and you see this is our test user, and from here we can just click this one. So this is our role, and save. So you see now the user have that role of normal user. So now if I log out and log in as the test user, test at example, then save, login, you see. So now we are able to see these links, and now if I go to manage users, you can see I'm only able to see the listing of users, but I don't have any action that I can perform, you see. And if I go to manage roles, you see this action is unauthorized. Why? Because this user does not have any permission to access that particular page. So what we can do, we can just block this user from seeing this particular link. So to block, we need to apply the can directive. So we can just say can, and then we can just say role. So this we are going to pass the permission. So role, then view. So if they have that particular permission, then they will see this link, but if not, means they will not see that particular link. So if we go back here, let me just go back and refresh. And here you see I have this error which is coming from the sidebar. Okay, now let's see. Oh yeah, so here it should be and can. Okay, now let me go back here and try again. Yeah, so here you can see the role management link has been deleted or has been hidden. Why? Because this particular user does not have ability to manage any role. Okay, so here you can see we are just to be able to see the user management. So basically, now let's go and log in again as the super admin. So let's log in as a super admin. Admin, then the password. Okay, and now let's go back to the manage roles, and you can see here these are the permissions. As I've shown you how we created them through these checkboxes, and from here you can just see this is how we created them. So that is what you are seeing here. Okay, so you can just update this if you want. You can just remove that if you want. But also the next thing that you need to do is to control how you can use the also the guard, because now currently by default the guard name of all the roles will be web. But if you want to control multiple guards, so you need to make sure that you control that. And from this Laravel Spatie, let's say from the Laravel Spatie component or package, so Laravel Permission component package, you can see from here it has a way to manage multiple guards. So if you go down here, and you can see there is a way to manage the guards. So let's say from here, yeah, so here you can see if you want to use the guard, so if you are using multiple guards or the guard name, so you must read the following multiple guard documentation. So this is the documentation that explains step by step on how you can use multiple guards. Okay, but for the sake of our video, I'll just leave it this way. So just control the name of the roles and then their permissions. So now you can create more users as you want, as I've shown you on my demo. So you can create another user. Let's say you can just publish that from there. You can say this can be, let's say, a normal user, or we can just not select any of these. But by the way, let's select that one. So this is our user. So now we can just let's say create a new role, which should be, let's say, a manager. And this manager, let's say, can be able to see the users, can be able to create and edit the users, but not be able to delete, similar way to these other details. Okay, and then they cannot be able to update these details. So save. So you can see now we have this particular role. So I'm going to change that from here. So this, instead of being a normal user, so we're just going to give him the manager and save. So now this is our manager. So if we try to log in by using this particular account, okay, now let's log in. So you see now the manager, you can see, has been able to see the manage user. Okay, and you can see, so the manager can be able to add the user, edit them, but cannot be able to delete them. The other things that we have given our manager, so we have to create the particular Livewire component for managing the cars and also the brand. But for the intention of our video, which was to manage the roles and permission and to create the role-based access control approach on our system. Up to now, we have the full functional role management application or module, so that you can be able to use it on your project, and it will serve you as you want. So the other thing that I'm going to do from now onward, if you want to skip, it will be fine, because this will only be for polishing. Okay, so now let me just start to work on the dashboard, and then I'll start to build the other Livewire components.